Immigration, the Google Guys challenge. What's so special about immigrants? Maybe it's the fact that they're not terribly bugged by having to start all over again. When it comes to Israel, there have been waves of immigration, from the beginning of the state until the present. In 1948, Israel launched Operation Moses, rescuing some 8,000 Jews from Ethiopia. That was followed up in 1991 by Operation Solomon, in which some 34,000 Ethiopian Jews were airlifted to the state of Israel. These new immigrants were basically illiterate. In their home country, they had no cars, no industry, no supermarkets, and they were in fact a burden on Israel, which had to assimilate them all and do it quickly. Then came another wave of immigration, this time from the former Soviet Union. This, by contrast, proved to be a huge boon to the Israeli economy. There was, for example, Natan Sharansky, who had spent 14 years in a Soviet prison for having had the audacity to request to emigrate to Israel. He was called a refusnik. Once in Israel, he delivered some sage advice to all public servants. Go to prison first, then into politics, not the other way around. But among these new Russian immigrants were many highly educated engineers with PhDs who just couldn't find work. Some of them got together and launched a bold new plan. They founded a night school for students of all ages, focusing on science and math. It was called Mofet, which in Hebrew stands for math, physics, and culture. And in Hebrew, it also means excellence. The Mofet Institute reflected the larger ethos of the Russian immigrants. If Mofet is any indication, immigration has been very good indeed for Israel. Then consider Israel's population growth, largely deriving from immigration. In 1948, Israel's population was around 806,000. Today, it's well over 7,100,000 and growing. 1/3 of Israelis are foreign-born, representing some 70 nationalities and cultures. Jews have represented only 2% of the Soviet population, but 30% of Russian doctors and 20% of her engineers. And they've always been driven by a competitive streak. They came to Israel at the most opportune time, at the dawn of the tech boom, the 1990s. What are some entrepreneurial characteristics that immigrants in particular might embody? Problem-solving ability, resilience, work orientation, relationship building ability, risk propensity, and influencing ability. And speaking of risk, there's the attribute of drive. Namely, comfortable people don't risk everything they have. And immigrants have never been high on the comfort scale. Israel recognizes the gift it's been given by its immigrant population and has created the Re'ut Institute, the bold goal of which is to place Israel among the top 15 richest nations in the world by 2020. The operating theory is that a nation of immigrants is a nation of entrepreneurs. An example being the Jewish refugees from Iraq, 150,000 strong, arriving in 1950. They became one of the most productive of all immigrant groups in Israel. The truth is, there's a real connection between the immigration policies of Western countries and the approach of Israel. Consider an American example. Between the 17th and 19th centuries, immigration to the U.S. was wide open. But then the policy tightened. A classic case of xenophobia. Then came the Immigration Act of 1924, placing restrictions on immigration and adopting quotas. Nor did FDR change that policy, even through the Holocaust, the Shoah, from 1938 through 1945. He just abandoned the issue to the State Department. Some claim that FDR abandoned the Jews, and some have gone as far as to call him anti-Semitic because he basically shut the borders at a time when people needed to come, when those borders needed to be open. Latin America admitted a few Jews, but only a few. Flash forward a bit until after the Second World War. A good many countries closed their doors to refugees, Canada among them. But with the birth of the State of Israel, on May 14, 1948, the law of return was enacted. Every Jew anywhere in the world was granted immediate citizenship in the new Jewish state, just upon setting foot in the country. On a cultural level, this promoted incredible diversity. Most Israelis today speak Hebrew as well as another language. Even today, on Dizengoff Street in Tel Aviv, there are newspapers in Ladino and German. In many places in the country, there are Russian signs, food, papers, and even Russian television. Israel today is actually the only country in the world actively seeking to increase immigration. In 1949 and 1950, Israel undertook Operation Magic Carpet, a massive airlift to rescue the Jews of Yemen. In the late 1940s, Israel paid the government of Romania to release 350,000 Jews for immediate immigration to Israel. Nicolae Ceausescu, the Romanian corrupt dictator, demanded cash. So Israel paid the equivalent of $112,498,800 to rescue some 40,577 Jews, or $2,772 apiece. Once in Israel, the Ministry of Aliyah and Immigrant Absorption had a lot on its hands. And the Hebrew language training program called Ulpan was offered for free. There are courses for new immigrants to prepare them for various licensing exams. There's the Center for Absorption in Science that matches arriving scientists with employers. There are entrepreneurship centers providing startup capital for new immigrants with ideas. And a group of private Israeli citizens launched Tech Careers, basically a boot camp to prepare Ethiopians for high-tech jobs. Bottom line, at the very beginning of the state, David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, well understood that immigrants were not only needed, but essential to settle the land, to fight Israel's wars, and to breathe life into Israel's nascent economy. And you know what? History judges him pretty well.